Hello, my name is Jocelyn, and this is my introduction to my experience with my disease, basically. I have a condition called POTS, and that's a very, very short term for a huge, all-encompassing, all-affecting syndrome. The official title is Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome, i.e. POTS. It is a syndrome that affects your autonomic nervous system, or the part of your nervous system that controls everything that happens automatically in your body. Your heart rate, respiratory rate, even just pretty much everything that you don't think about doing. And over the last 2 years, basically, POTS has taken me, I am 42, has taken me from being a fully functioning, almost type A, working 40 to 60 hours a week, a registered nurse, top of my field, a person who's worked 40 to 60 hours a week my entire professional life, who's worked since the age of 15, to being completely disabled and currently on disability. I'll be doing a series of these, I guess, little informational posts to talk about POTS, to talk about my own experience with it, to try to give some suggestions, ideas, resources, and basically some hope for people out there experiencing similar symptoms, who have the disease, who think they might have the disease. Because the more that I started looking for answers when I first started experiencing symptoms that were kind of vague and hard to define, the harder it got, and the more frustrated I got, and the worse I felt. And in our current medical system, I mean, I have luckily a fabulous primary care doctor who believed me and didn't just tell me it was in my head. But I cannot tell you the number of specialists that I have seen, procedures I've had, labs, and again, testing, and specialists of all different kinds that I've gone to who couldn't give me answers, except to say there's something wrong. And the default seems to always be, well, maybe it's just depression, or the symptoms often overlap with chronic fatigue syndrome, and or fibromyalgia, things like that. I initially had started feeling the main huge symptom, which was overwhelming fatigue, in the spring of 2012. I was working as a school nurse at the time, and just figured that the kids had, working with kids, that I was getting the flu and sick all the time. However, I started getting more symptoms, just odd things. I start to do any activity, walking, dishes, laundry, housework, whatever, more than 30 minutes, and I just get flushed, overwhelmingly hot. I'd check my temperature, and I'd have a fever, anywhere from 100 to 102. Then I'd sit down, and within a half hour, 45 minutes, the fever would go away. In addition to that, I started getting progressively more and more dizzy and lightheaded when I would change positions. Anything from, if I'd go from sitting to standing, if, heaven forbid, I squat down more times than I could count. Over the next few months, there'd be times, where we'd be somewhere and I would start to feel lightheaded and literally just sit down where we were. Luckily, I don't get embarrassed very easily. So, in the middle of that summer, I guess July, it would have been, of 2012, I thought, well, maybe it's mono with the, the fatigue. I mean, at that point, I would literally get home from work, and again, I'm 42 now. I was 40 at the time. I had 3 kids living at home. Do what I had to do when my kids were here with me and go to sleep. On my weekends, the kids weren't here. I would literally sleep anywhere from 18 to 22 hours a day and still not be refreshed and be soundly sleeping. So again, got worked up, wasn't mono, they did blood, the whole workup. Basically said, well, maybe it's diverticulitis, but we don't really know. Here, take a bunch of antibiotics, and they gave me a bunch of antibiotics and said, this should probably help you. And that was that. It did not help. Come the start of the school year when the kids came back, and I was working, all the summer I was working about 40 to 50 hours a week getting prepped. And once the kids came back to school, it was a precipitous fall. The fatigue continued. I would literally be sitting up, getting ready for work, and fall asleep. Actively doing things, I would fall asleep. I started getting more and more what's called brain fog, where I knew I wasn't remembering things right. And that scared me terribly because I was responsible for patients, for my children under my care and my own children. I wasn't remembering. I would lose track mid-sentence on what I was saying. I couldn't coordinate things. I was starting to having trouble swallowing, especially as the day went on. The later in the day it was, the worse my symptoms became that way. Word finding was horrible and embarrassing. I mean, I knew what I wanted to say, but I couldn't find the words. Kind of all came to a head in October of 2012, where basically between, March of 2012 and when I went off work, the end of October of 2012, I had to call in sick or come in late to work more times in that small, 6-month time frame than I had in my entire 25 years of working. So they put me off work on short-term disability, thinking we could figure it out, working under the assumption it was chronic fatigue, which it wasn't, and thus began my trek into the land of specialists and testing. Long story short, the time frame from then until I was sent to the proper specialist who diagnosed me. I went off work October of 2012. I was finally diagnosed with what's called tilt table testing and QSARTs, which are specialty tests, by a neurologist at a specialty hospital called Freighter Hospital in Milwaukee. In July, the end of July of 2013 was when I was first just diagnosed, and started treatment in August and September of 2013. It is now April 24th of 2014, and I have not yet been back to work. I am being treated. The symptoms are treatable. It is a condition that will not go away. It is not curable. There are things that I do, including physical therapy, compression hose, certain medications, but again, it's something that will not go away. And it is very frustrating. And again, the main thing what I am still going through, and what I've heard a lot until I got the official diagnosis, was that it was in my head. A lot of it was just in my head and depression. And I'll admit, I'm depressed. I was depressed, and I have been depressed, because how do you not be depressed when your entire life changes? I gained 80 pounds. I stopped being able to do things, go places on my own. I completely changed. It changed my life completely. And I don't point that out or say that to be depressing to others out there who have it, but more as the fact that the more I looked to, the more I realized I wasn't alone. And if you're new to this or new to the diagnosis, you're not alone. There are a lot of us out there. POTS itself, or dysautonomias, is the kind of overall name for these conditions, have only been studied recently, probably the last 10 to 15 years really started to get studied as a specific syndromes. Of course, it's been around for decades and has been put under different labels, but they've really only recently, when you think about it, 10 to 15 years, really been studying this in particular. There are a lot of neurologists who are currently out there who do not know about dysautonomias. And I know it from personal experience. I saw a highly regarded neurologist in January of 2013 who said there wasn't anything wrong with me neurologically. Then, of course, when I saw the specialists at Frederick Hospital, who again were neurologists with experience in dysautonomias, they were the ones who did the correct testing that I'd asked for way back in January, just from researching even chronic fatigue syndrome, and found out, yes, indeed, I have it. And I have it good. So anyway, this is just my introduction to me with my disease. To let you know you're not alone and that there is hope. It goes up and down. It doesn't ever go away. But there are people out there and there are places you can go to get the right answers.